My name is Gloria Thompson. I'm 36 years old, and until recently, I thought I had everything figured out. I've been a military doctor for over a decade, dutifully sending $2,000 every month to support my 16-year-old daughter Lily, who was staying with my parents and sister, while I served overseas. I never imagined that coming home for Christmas would reveal the most painful betrayal of my life. When I casually asked Lily if the money I sent was enough, her confused reply of, "What money?" made my parents go pale. I never thought I'd have to use legal means against my own family, but sometimes the deepest wounds come from those we trust the most. In the middle of this holiday nightmare, while I share how I discovered my own family's betrayal and what I did about it, let me know where you're watching from. And hit subscribe if you've ever been deceived by those you trusted most. I've always been the ambitious one in my family. Growing up in a middle-class neighborhood in Cincinnati, I was the girl who dissected frogs in the garage and read medical journals for fun. My father, William, worked as an accountant at a local firm, steady and reliable. My mother, Karen, taught third grade at the elementary school a few miles from our house. And then there was my younger sister, Natalie, 4 years my junior, who preferred social events to studying and always had a way of charming everyone around her. From my earliest memories, I was fascinated by medicine. I remember watching medical documentaries while other kids my age were watching cartoons. By the time I was in high school, I had already mapped out my entire career path, pre-med medical school, and then joining the military as a doctor. My parents were supportive, but concerned about the financial burden of medical school. "Medicine is a noble profession, Gloria," my father would say. "But have you considered something more practical?" I never wavered from my dreams, though. I worked multiple jobs through undergraduate school, earned scholarships, and eventually made it to medical school. It was there I met Mark. He was studying business administration, charming and full of big ideas. We were young and impulsive, and within a year of dating, I found myself pregnant. I was 20 years old, only halfway through medical school. Mark was excited at first. We got married in a small courthouse ceremony with just my parents and Natalie present. His parents lived across the country and couldn't afford the trip, or so he said. Looking back, there were red flags I chose to ignore. When Lily was born, she was perfect. Tiny fingers, bright blue eyes that would later turn hazel just like mine, and a full head of dark hair. I took a semester off to care for her, then returned to my studies with renewed determination. Now, I wasn't just following my dreams for myself, but for my daughter too. Mark stuck around for 2 more years, but his big ideas never materialized into actual jobs or contributions. He became distant, staying out late with friends complaining about being tied down. When Lily was 2, I came home from an overnight hospital shift to find a note on the kitchen table. "This isn't the life I want. I'm sorry. Don't try to find me." Just like that, I became a single mother in medical school. My parents stepped up immediately, offering to help with Lily while I finished my education. Natalie, who was in college by then, would babysit during holidays and breaks. "We're family, Gloria," my mother said. "We support each other." I graduated medical school with honors and faced a crucial decision. The military offered significant loan forgiveness and a stable career path, but it would mean deployments away from Lily. After weeks of deliberation and discussions with my parents, I decided to join the Army Medical Corps. "We'll take care of Lily whenever you're deployed," my father promised. "She'll always have a stable home with us." For the first few years, I was stationed domestically, and Lily lived with me. We had a small apartment near the base, and I built my career while raising my daughter. She was a bright, curious child who loved books and asking questions about everything. I made sure to be present for every school play, parent-teacher conference, and birthday party I could attend. But when Lily turned 12, I received orders for my first overseas deployment to a combat zone in the Middle East. It would be a 14-month tour. My heart sank when I got the news. Lily was entering her formative teenage years, and I would miss so much of it. "It's just over a year," my mother reassured me. "We'll take good care of her, and technology makes it easier to stay connected. You can video call whenever you have time." It made sense for Lily to stay with my parents during this deployment. My sister Natalie had moved back in with them after a bad breakup, so there would be 3 adults to care for my daughter. I set up a detailed financial arrangement. I would send $2,000 each month to cover Lily's expenses, food, clothing, school activities, medical needs, and savings for her future. "That's very generous," my father said when I told him the amount. "We don't need nearly that much." "I want to make sure Lily has everything she needs and more," I insisted. "And I want you all to have support for taking on this responsibility." The day I had to say goodbye to Lily at the airport was one of the hardest of my life. She was trying to be brave, but I could see the fear in her eyes. "It's only 14 months, sweetheart," I said, hugging her tight. "I'll call every week and I'll send care packages. And before you know it, I'll be home." "Promise you'll be safe, Mom?" she asked, her voice small. "I promise. I'll do everything I can to stay safe and come back to you." The first few months of deployment were brutal. The heat, the long hours treating wounded soldiers, the constant state of alertness wore me down. But my weekly video calls with Lily kept me going. I noticed she seemed quieter than usual, but I attributed it to normal teenage development and the stress of having her mother so far away. 14 months into my deployment, I received unexpected news. Due to a scheduling change, I would be able to go home for 2 weeks during Christmas. I was ecstatic. I hadn't told my family yet, wanting to surprise them, especially Lily. I booked my flights and started shopping for gifts online. I wanted this Christmas to be special after so much time apart. I spent a small fortune on presents. A new laptop for Lily, as she had mentioned her school projects were getting more complex. Designer clothes that she'd been admiring online. The latest smartphone to replace the basic one she'd been using. I also bought thoughtful gifts for my parents and Natalie to show my appreciation for their help with Lily. As my return date approached, my excitement grew. I couldn't wait to see how much Lily had grown, to hear about her school experiences in person, and to simply hold my daughter again. Little did I know that this homecoming would reveal a betrayal so deep, it would shatter my trust in the people I loved most. The day of my return finally arrived. After more than 14 grueling months treating wounded soldiers in a war zone, I was coming home for Christmas. I had managed to keep my homecoming a secret from Lily, wanting to surprise her, but I had told my parents and Natalie so they could pick me up from the airport. I imagined the entire family would be there waiting with Lily, shocked to see her mother unexpectedly home for the holidays. When I walked through the airport terminal, exhausted but excited, I was surprised to see only Natalie waiting for me. She was dressed in a designer coat I didn't recognize, with a new haircut and expensive-looking boots. "Where's everyone else?" I asked after we hugged. "Dad's got some year-end accounting work and Mom's helping Lily with a school project," Natalie explained, taking one of my bags. "They'll be so excited to see you." Something felt off about her explanation, but I brushed it aside, attributing it to my own fatigue from the long journey. As we drove from the airport to my parents' house, I noticed Natalie was driving a brand new Audi. "Nice car," I commented. "When did you get this?" "Oh, a few months ago," she said vaguely. "Got a good deal on it." I asked about Lily, eager for details about my daughter's life that might not have come through in our weekly video calls. "How's she really doing? Is she making friends? Does she like her teachers?" Natalie's answers were oddly evasive. "She's fine. You know how teenagers are, they don't tell us adults much. She spends a lot of time in her room." When we pulled into my parents' driveway, I noticed several upgrades to their modest home. New landscaping, fresh paint, and what appeared to be a recently installed front door. Inside, the changes were even more apparent. The living room had been completely redecorated with high-end furniture. A massive flat-screen TV dominated one wall, and the kitchen had new stainless steel appliances. "Wow, you guys have been busy," I said, looking around. "Just some overdue updates," my mother said as she hugged me. The old furniture was falling apart. My father embraced me next, and I noticed he was wearing an expensive-looking watch I hadn't seen before. Something nagged at me, but I pushed it aside. I was home to see my daughter, not to question my parents' spending habits. "Where's Lily?" I asked eagerly. "She's upstairs in her room," my mother replied. "She doesn't know you're here." I practically ran up the stairs to the guest room that had become Lily's bedroom during my deployment. I knocked softly and opened the door to find my daughter sitting on her bed with headphones on, reading a worn paperback book. For a moment, she didn't notice me. I took in the sight of her taller than I remembered, her dark hair longer, her face more defined as the last traces of childhood softened into teenage features. When she looked up and saw me, there was a moment of disconnect before recognition dawned in her eyes. "Mom," she whispered, and then louder, "Mom." She launched herself off the bed and into my arms. I held her tight, tears streaming down both our faces. It had been so long, too long. But as we embraced, I couldn't help noticing details about her room and appearance that seemed off. The room was sparsely decorated, nothing like the typical teenager's space filled with posters and personal items. Her clothes, what I could see of them, looked worn and outdated. The desk in the corner held an ancient desktop computer, not the laptop I'd sent money for months ago. "Let me look at you," I said, holding her at arm's length. She was wearing jeans that were slightly too short and a sweater that had seen better days. Where were all the clothes I'd been sending money for? Why wasn't she using the smartphone I'd specifically transferred extra money to purchase 6 months ago? "I've missed you so much," Lily said, wiping tears from her cheeks. "I've missed you too, sweetheart, more than you know." We went downstairs together, my arm around her shoulders. I couldn't stop looking at her, drinking in the sight of my daughter after so many months apart. But questions kept bubbling up in my mind. That evening, we had a welcome home dinner that seemed unusually lavish. Expensive cuts of steak, fancy wine, and a store-bought gourmet dessert. My mother had always been a good cook, but she'd never been extravagant. As we ate, I mentioned the presents I'd brought back. "I've got a new laptop for you, Lily," I said excitedly. "And wait until you see the clothes I picked out." My parents exchanged a quick glance, and Natalie suddenly became very interested in her food. "That's so generous," my mother said. "You really didn't have to bring anything." "Of course I did," I replied. "And it's just the start. Has the money I've been sending been enough? 2,000 a month should have covered everything Lily needs with some left over for savings." Another glance between my parents, more pronounced this time. Lily looked confused. "You've been sending money?" she asked innocently. The question hung in the air for a moment, but Natalie quickly jumped in. "So tell us about your deployment. What was it like over there?" I let the conversation shift, deciding this wasn't the moment to press the issue. I wanted to enjoy our reunion first, to soak in the joy of being with my daughter again. But a seed of suspicion had been planted, and it would not stop growing. Later that night, after Lily had gone to bed, I sat in the living room with my parents and sister. The conversation felt strained, with unusual pauses and awkward transitions. I mentioned my plans to take Lily shopping the next day. "She seems to need some new clothes," I observed, "and I'd like to get her a winter coat. The one she has looks too small." "We've been meaning to do a shopping trip," my mother said quickly. "Just haven't found the time with all the holiday preparations." I nodded, but I wasn't satisfied. Something was very wrong here, and I was determined to find out what. As I lay in bed that night, in my old bedroom that now looked completely different with new furniture and decor, I made a plan to get to the bottom of the mystery of the missing money and my daughter's obvious lack of material support. The following day, I suggested to Lily that we have a girls' day out together, just the two of us catching up and reconnecting. My parents seemed slightly anxious about this plan, but couldn't come up with a reasonable objection. Natalie offered to come along, but I gently insisted this was mother-daughter time. "We have 14 months to catch up on," I said with a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. "I'm sure you understand." I took Lily to a shopping mall first, wanting to observe her reactions and get her talking in a neutral environment. As we walked past stores, I noticed how her eyes lingered on basic items that she should already have had if my money had been used properly. "See anything you like?" I asked as we passed a display of winter boots. "Those look warm," she said, pointing to a practical pair. "But they're probably really expensive." "Let's go try them on," I suggested, guiding her into the store. When I insisted on buying them for her, along with a proper winter coat, she seemed genuinely surprised and grateful for items that should have been basic necessities. Over lunch at a casual restaurant, I started asking more direct questions, careful to keep my tone casual and curious rather than accusatory or suspicious. How's school going? Are you participating in any clubs or activities? Lily pushed her food around the plate. Not really. Grandma and Grandpa said the activity fees were too expensive, and some of the trips needed special equipment. What about the art class you were so excited about last year? You were really looking forward to that. She shrugged. I couldn't join. They needed money for supplies and a portfolio. My heart sank. I had specifically discussed the art class with my parents before deploying, emphasizing how important it was to Lily's development and happiness. I had increased the monthly amount from $1,500 to $2,000, partly to ensure she could participate in all the activities she wanted. What about the books you like to read? Have you been able to get new ones? I borrow from friends mostly, she said. Or use the library. Aunt Natalie says books are a waste of money when you only read them once. Each revelation was like a knife in my heart. I had been sending more than enough money to cover all these things, and much more. Where had it all gone? I decided to be more direct. Lily, sweetheart, I want to ask you something important, and I need you to be completely honest with me, okay? She nodded, looking nervous. While I've been away, have you been receiving the things I sent for you? The gifts, the money for special occasions. Her brow furrowed in confusion. What gifts? I sent you a package for your birthday with a new smartphone. And at Christmas last year, I ordered you those boots you wanted, the ones with the stars on them. And every few months I transferred extra money for clothes shopping. Lily shook her head slowly. Mom, I didn't get any packages. And Grandma and Grandpa said you couldn't afford to send extra money because the military doesn't pay you enough, especially when you're overseas. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Lily misinterpreted my silence. It's okay, Mom. I understand you had important work to do saving people's lives. That's way more important than stuff. The maturity and acceptance in her voice nearly broke me. My child had been led to believe I couldn't or wouldn't provide for her, while my own family apparently diverted thousands of dollars meant for her care. What about the monthly allowance? I asked, my voice carefully controlled. I've been sending $2,000 every month for your expenses. Lily's eyes widened. $2,000 every month. The look of complete shock on her face told me everything I needed to know. She hadn't seen a penny of that money. What money? She asked, the very words that would later become central to the confrontation with my family. I reached across the table and took her hand. Don't worry about it right now, sweetie. I'm going to take care of everything. For the rest of our day together, I focused on making Lily happy. We went shopping for clothes books and other items she needed. I bought her the art supplies she'd been longing for. Through it all, I carefully asked more questions, building a complete picture of the situation at home. When we returned to my parents' house that evening, laden with shopping bags, my mother raised her eyebrows. My goodness, Gloria, that's quite a spree. Just getting Lily some things she needs, I replied evenly. Seems she's been going without a lot lately. My mother's face tightened, and she quickly changed the subject. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I conducted my investigation. I started in my father's home office, where he kept his financial records. The filing cabinet was locked, but I knew where he kept the spare key hidden above the door frame since I was a child. Inside, I found bank statements for accounts I didn't recognize. One in particular caught my eye, a savings account in my father's name that showed regular monthly deposits of $2,000, corresponding exactly with the transfers I'd been making. The balance was far less than it should have been if they'd been saving the money for Lily, indicating they'd been spending it. Next, I found a folder labeled Home Improvements, with receipts for all the upgrades I'd noticed: $15,000 for kitchen appliances, $20,000 for new furniture, $8,000 for landscaping. The dates aligned perfectly with my deployment period. In my mother's desk drawer, I found a jewelry appraisal for a diamond tennis bracelet purchased 6 months ago, valued at $12,000. I'd noticed her wearing it at dinner, but hadn't thought much of it at the time. Moving to Natalie's room while she slept, I carefully searched her closet and found the receipt for her new Audi with a down payment of $20,000 made just 3 months after I deployed. In her dresser, I discovered brochures for a European vacation package, with deposits paid for a trip the following summer for 3 people. Lily's name was noticeably absent from the reservation. Most heartbreaking of all was a stack of mail I found in Natalie's closet. Letters addressed to Lily from her friends' school announcements, and several cards and letters from me that had never been delivered to her. They had been systematically intercepting her mail, controlling what information reached her. By the time I finished my investigation, it was nearly dawn. I had photographic evidence of everything I'd found stored securely in my phone and uploaded to my cloud account. I also had a complete understanding of what had happened. My family had used my deployment as an opportunity to embezzle nearly $30,000 intended for my daughter's care, spending it on luxury items and experiences for themselves, while Lily went without basics. I returned everything to its place and went to my room, where I spent the early morning hours making phone calls to my bank, a military legal advisor, and a civilian attorney who specialized in family law and financial fraud. By breakfast time, I had a plan. It wasn't the Christmas reunion I had imagined, but I was prepared to do whatever necessary to protect my daughter and hold my family accountable. The stage was set for our traditional Christmas Eve dinner. My mother had outdone herself with the meal preparations, cooking a massive turkey with all the trimmings. The dining room table was set with the good china they rarely used when I was growing up, and expensive wine was being poured into crystal glasses I'd never seen before. The contrast between the lavish display and what I now knew about my daughter's deprivation over the past 14 months made my stomach turn. I'd spent the day helping my mother in the kitchen, playing the part of the grateful daughter home from deployment, all while observing the dynamics of the household with new eyes. Natalie lounged around the house in designer clothes, constantly checking her expensive phone. My father worked briefly in his home office before emerging to watch sports on the enormous new television. And Lily, my sweet Lily, quietly helped, where she could clearly accustomed to making herself useful and unobtrusive. Now we sat around the table, my father at the head, carving the turkey with a new set of cutlery, my mother beaming with pride at the spread, and Natalie already reaching for the wine. Lily sat beside me in one of the new dresses I'd bought her yesterday, looking happier than I'd seen her since my return. My father raised his glass. To Gloria's safe return. It's wonderful to have our family complete for Christmas. Hear, hear, my mother and Natalie echoed, clinking glasses. I smiled tightly and took a small sip of wine. I'd been waiting for the right moment, and it had arrived. It is wonderful to be home, I said, setting down my glass, especially to spend time with you, Lily. I turned to my daughter. I've been thinking about your future, sweetheart. Was the money I sent each month enough for your activities, and saving for college $2,000 should have covered quite a bit? Lily looked at me with confusion. What money? In that moment, I watched 3 distinct reactions unfold around the table. My father's face drained of color so rapidly, I could practically see his blood pressure dropping. My mother froze with her fork halfway to her mouth, her eyes widening in panic. And Natalie, ever the quick thinker, immediately jumped in. Mom made this amazing cranberry sauce from scratch, she said loudly. Lily, have you tried it yet? It's got orange zest in it. But I wasn't about to let the subject be changed. Not this time. It's a simple question, I continued calmly. The $2,000 I've been sending every month for Lily's expenses, was it enough? My father cleared his throat. Gloria, this is hardly dinner conversation. Let's enjoy our meal and discuss financial matters later. Actually, Dad, I think this is exactly the right time to discuss it with everyone present, I replied, maintaining my composure, because it seems there's been some confusion about the money I've been sending. What are you talking about? My mother asked, her voice higher than normal. I'm talking about the $30,000 I've transferred into your account over the past 15 months, I said. Money that was specifically intended for Lily's care and future. My father attempted to regain control of the situation. We've been putting that money aside for Lily's college fund, of course. That's interesting, I replied, pulling out my phone. Because according to these bank statements, the money has been going into your personal account, not a college fund. I slid the phone across the table to show him the screenshots I'd taken. And the balance is nowhere near what it should be if you were saving it. You went through our financial records, My father sputtered, outrage replacing his initial shock. I did, I acknowledged without apology. After Lily told me she hadn't received any of the gifts I sent or the extra money for clothes, or been allowed to participate in school activities because they were supposedly too expensive. Lily looked back and forth between us, confusion giving way to understanding. You really did send money for me. Every month, sweetheart, $2,000 plus extra for your birthday, Christmas, and special occasions. My mother jumped in, her voice trembling. We were going to tell you about the savings when you were older, Lily. We just didn't want you to become spoiled or materialistic. Is that why you bought a $12,000 tennis bracelet, Mom? I asked, to avoid being materialistic. Her hand flew to the bracelet on her wrist and she flushed dark red. Or maybe it was to avoid the materialism of a new kitchen and living room furniture. I continued. Or Dad's new watch. Or perhaps Natalie's brand new Audi was an exercise in spiritual growth. You have no right to judge how we use that money, Natalie suddenly snapped. Do you have any idea how hard it is to take care of a teenager? We deserved compensation. Compensation, I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. Beyond the $2,000 a month that should have more than covered all expenses with plenty left over. You abandoned your daughter to go play hero overseas, Natalie shot back. We've been doing your job as parents. Natalie, my mother hissed, but the damage was done. Lily's eyes filled with tears. Is that true? You've been keeping Mom's money? My father attempted damage control. Now, Lily, it's not that simple. We were setting some aside for your future, and using some for household expenses that benefit everyone, including you. Like the European vacation you've booked for next summer? I asked. The one for 3 people that doesn't include Lily. My mother gasped. Clearly, she hadn't expected me to find that evidence. Or perhaps you were talking about the intercepted mail. I continued, turning to Natalie. The letters and cards from me that Lily never received, was that also for her benefit? Natalie at least had the decency to look ashamed. You kept Mom's letters from me, Lily asked, her voice breaking. The dinner had completely fallen apart now. Lily was crying. My parents were ashen-faced, and Natalie was alternating between defensiveness and guilt. I trusted you, I said, looking at each of them in turn. I trusted you with the most precious person in my life, and with the financial support to care for her properly. And you betrayed that trust in the most profound way possible. Gloria, please, my mother began. We can explain. I think you've explained plenty, I replied, through your actions and your attempts to cover them up. My father tried a different approach. What exactly do you want from us, Gloria? It was the opening I'd been waiting for. I want to make something very clear. I said, my voice steady and controlled. I'm not going to yell or make a scene. That's not who I am. Instead, I'm going to do this. I pulled out my phone again, placed it on the table, and dialed a number I'd saved earlier. I put it on speaker. Hello, Gloria, answered a professional female voice. Are you ready to proceed as we discussed? Yes, Catherine, I replied. I have my family here with me now. Could you please identify yourself for them? Of course. My name is Catherine Wilson. I'm a partner with Wilson Martinez and Brown, specializing in family law and financial fraud cases. The color drained from my father's face. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Natalie stared at the phone in disbelief. Catherine, I continued, could you please explain to my family what we discussed earlier today? Certainly, the lawyer replied. Based on the evidence you've provided, we have a clear case of financial misappropriation. The systematic diversion of funds intended for a minor's care constitutes fraud. Additionally, the interception of mail addressed to your daughter is a federal offense. We're prepared to file civil charges immediately, and the prosecutor's office has expressed interest in the criminal aspects of the case, particularly the mail tampering. What are the potential consequences? I asked, though I already knew the answer. In a case like this, with the amount exceeding $25,000, we're looking at felony charges that could result in significant fines and possibly incarceration. The court would almost certainly order full restitution of all misappropriated funds, plus interest and legal fees. My family sat in stunned silence. You'd send your own parents to jail, my father finally whispered. That depends entirely on what happens next, I replied. Catherine, could you outline the alternative arrangement we discussed? We've prepared a settlement agreement, the lawyer explained. It requires full acknowledgement of wrongdoing, complete restitution of all diverted funds within 6 months, and a binding commitment to family counseling. If these terms are met in full and on time, Ms. Thompson is willing to refrain from pressing criminal charges. I looked around the table at my shell-shocked family. Those are your options. Either way, Lily will be coming with me tonight. I've already booked a hotel room for us. This is ridiculous, Natalie said, but her voice lacked conviction. You can't prove anything. I pulled out a manila envelope and spread its contents across the table: bank statements, receipts, photographs of the intercepted mail, and printouts of my original transfer records. I have everything documented, I said calmly. Every dollar traced from my account to yours and then to your various purchases. I have photographs of all the evidence securely backed up to multiple locations. And I have Lily's testimony about the conditions she's been living under. We took good care of her, my mother protested. Did you? I turned to Lily. Sweetheart, when was the last time you got new clothes before yesterday's shopping trip? Last Christmas, she said quietly. And those were from the discount store. And your art classes, the ones I specifically sent extra money for? They said we couldn't afford them, Lily replied, understanding dawning in her eyes. They said you didn't send enough money for extras. My father's shoulders slumped in defeat. Gloria, please. We made a mistake. We never meant for it to go this far. A mistake is forgetting to pay a bill or buying the wrong size shoes, I replied. This was a systematic, deliberate theft from your own granddaughter while letting her believe her mother didn't care enough to provide for her. That's not a mistake, that's a betrayal. Natalie finally broke. It was my idea, she admitted. The first month we just borrowed a little for some home repairs. We were going to pay it back, but then it just got easier to take more. I bought the car, she continued. Mom got her jewelry. Dad invested some in stocks. It felt like you had so much being a doctor and all, and we'd never had nice things. So you took from a child, I said. From your niece. My mother was crying now. What do you want us to do? I looked at Catherine on the phone. The agreement. I'll email it to you now, she replied. They'll need to sign it tonight, and we'll need a certified check for the first installment of restitution within 48 hours. We don't have that kind of money just sitting around, my father protested. We spent it. Sell the jewelry, I suggested coldly. Return the unused vacation deposits. Liquidate whatever you need to. Those are the terms. Lily sat beside me, tears streaming down her face as she witnessed the full extent of her grandparents' and aunt's deception. I put my arm around her shoulders. Lily and I are going to pack her things now, I said, standing. When we come back down, I expect you to have made your decision. Either sign the agreement and begin making amends, or I call the police tonight. As Lily and I walked upstairs, I could hear the panicked conversation break out behind us. My father was already on the phone with his bank. My mother was removing her jewelry, and Natalie was crying. In Lily's room, as we packed her meager belongings, she turned to me with confusion and hurt in her eyes. Why didn't you yell at them? I would have screamed. I sat on the bed beside her and took her hands in mine. Yelling might feel good in the moment, but it rarely solves problems, I explained. I learned in the military that the most effective response to a crisis isn't the loudest or most emotional, but the most strategic. I wanted to show you that when people betray you, you don't need to lose control to stand up for yourself. You can be calm, prepared, and still hold them accountable. I hugged her close. I'm so sorry I wasn't here to protect you from this. I thought I was providing for you, making sure you had everything you needed. It's not your fault, she said with a wisdom beyond her years. You were saving lives, and you're fixing it now. When we returned downstairs with her bags, my family was waiting. The agreement was on the table, already signed by all three of them. We'll pay everything back, my father said, his voice hollow. We've already called the bank about liquidating some investments. Natalie has agreed to sell her car, my mother added, and I'll return the jewelry tomorrow. I nodded, gathering the papers. We'll be staying at a hotel until I arrange for a rental apartment. Lily will not be returning to this house until the counseling is well underway, and I'm convinced genuine changes have been made. As Lily and I walked to the door, Natalie called out, "Are you really going to make us do therapy?" I turned back one last time. Yes, because this isn't just about the money. It's about the breach of trust, the lies you told, and the way you treated a child who depended on you. If there's any hope of rebuilding a relationship, you need to understand why what you did was so profoundly wrong. With that, I led Lily out to the rental car. As we drove away from the house where I grew up, where I thought my daughter had been safe and loved, I felt a complex mixture of anger, grief, and determination. The Christmas lights that decorated the neighborhood seemed to mock the holiday spirit. But as I glanced at Lily beside me, I knew I had done the right thing. This wasn't the Christmas either of us had imagined, but it was the beginning of a new, more honest chapter in our lives. The Christmas Eve that Lily and I spent in a hotel near the airport wasn't festive in the traditional sense, but it held a different kind of significance. We ordered room service, watched holiday movies on the hotel TV, and talked more openly than we ever had before. Without the shadow of my family's deception hanging over us, Lily seemed to relax and open up about what the past 14 months had really been like. "They were nice to me most of the time," she explained, curled up on the hotel bed with a hot chocolate. "But they made it clear I should be grateful for everything, because you weren't sending enough money." "What did they tell you about the video calls we had?" I asked. I had faithfully called every week, unless I was in active surgery or dealing with a mass casualty situation, and even then I'd always made up the calls as soon as possible. "Grandma said you were very busy saving soldiers, and that sometimes you forgot about us at home," Lily said quietly. "When I asked to call you more often, they said the time difference made it too complicated." Each revelation was a fresh wound, but I maintained my composure for Lily's sake. "I want you to know that I thought about you every single day. I kept your picture with me in the field hospital. I talked about you so much that the other doctors teased me for being a proud mom." The next morning, Christmas Day, we exchanged the few gifts I had managed to bring in my luggage. I promised Lily that the rest would arrive once we had our own place. We spent the day making plans for our future, starting with finding a temporary apartment while I sorted out my next military assignment. "I'm going to request a stateside position," I told her. "I have enough overseas deployment time that they should accommodate me, especially with a dependent minor." Over the following days, things moved quickly. My attorney, Catherine, helped expedite the legal paperwork, and true to their word, my parents and Natalie began liquidating assets to make the first restitution payment. I found a furnished two-bedroom apartment with a month-to-month lease, and Lily and I moved in before New Year's. I received dozens of calls and texts from my family during this time. My mother pleaded for forgiveness. My father sent detailed spreadsheets of their repayment plan, and Natalie alternated between apologies and resentment at having to sell her car. I responded factually to the financial communications, but kept emotional conversations brief. The wound was still too fresh. 3 weeks after Christmas, we had our first mediated family meeting with a therapist who specialized in financial abuse and betrayal trauma. Dr. Martina Gonzalez had extensive experience with military families and understood the unique dynamics at play. "What we're dealing with here is not just financial fraud," she explained in that first session, "but a fundamental breach of trust that has affected Lily's sense of security and Gloria's faith in her support system." My parents sat stiffly on one side of the room, Natalie beside them, looking uncomfortable in clothes that were notably less fashionable than what she'd been wearing at Christmas. Lily and I sat opposite them, holding hands. "I'd like to begin by having each person acknowledge their role in what happened," Dr. Gonzalez said. "William, would you like to start?" My father, always the accountant, had prepared notes. "I misappropriated funds intended for my granddaughter's care." He read mechanically. "I justified it by telling myself that we deserved compensation for raising her. But that was wrong. I have begun liquidating investments to make restitution." It was a start, though clearly rehearsed. My mother went next. "I knew what we were doing was wrong," she admitted, tears already forming. "But it was so easy to just go along with it. Each month we'd say this would be the last time, but then the money would arrive and we'd find another reason to use it. She looked directly at Lily. I failed you as a grandmother and I'm deeply sorry. Natalie's acknowledgement was more reluctant. I suggested using some of the money at first just for emergencies, she said. But then it became normal. We started planning purchases around when Gloria's transfers would arrive. Did you ever consider what this meant for Lily? Dr. Gonzalez asked. Natalie squirmed. Not really. I guess I thought she had enough. She never complained. Because I was taught not to, Lily said suddenly. Every time I asked for something for school or mentioned needing new clothes, you'd remind me how lucky I was that you took me in and how Mom couldn't afford to send more. The sessions continued weekly. Progress was slow and uneven. Sometimes we'd have breakthroughs with genuine remorse and understanding. Other times, old patterns would emerge with my parents or Natalie becoming defensive or minimizing their actions. Throughout this period, I was negotiating with the Army Medical Corps for a reassignment. My commanding officer was sympathetic to my situation and helped expedite the process. By March, I had secured a position at a military hospital, just 2 hours from our new apartment, which meant Lily wouldn't have to change schools again. The financial restitution proceeded as agreed. My parents sold their second car, took out a home equity loan, and liquidated most of their non-retirement investments. Natalie not only sold her Audi, but took a second job to contribute to the repayments. By the 6-month deadline, they had repaid the full $30,000 plus the agreed-upon interest. More important than the financial restoration was the emotional work. In our therapy sessions, we gradually uncovered the resentments and jealousies that had fueled their betrayal. My mother admitted to always feeling that I had escaped the modest life she had settled for. My father revealed his shame at not being able to help me financially through medical school. Natalie confessed to lifelong jealousy of her successful older sister. None of that excuses what we did, my father acknowledged in our 6th month of therapy. But understanding why we were vulnerable to temptation helps us guard against it in the future. For Lily, the process was both painful and empowering. She learned to express her feelings of betrayal and abandonment, not just toward her grandparents and aunt, but also some toward me, for not somehow knowing what was happening. I know it's not fair to blame you, she told me during a private therapy session. You were literally saving lives in a war zone. But sometimes I was so lonely and I thought you'd forgotten about me. Those words broke my heart, but they were necessary to hear. We had to acknowledge all the pain before we could begin to heal it. By the time summer arrived, we had established a new normal. Lily and I were settled in a permanent apartment near my new hospital assignment. She was thriving in school, especially in her art classes that I made sure she could attend. Our relationship had grown stronger through adversity, with an openness and honesty that might never have developed otherwise. My relationship with my parents and sister was more complicated. We maintained contact primarily through our continuing therapy sessions, but the easy trust of before was gone. In its place was something more cautious, but perhaps ultimately healthier, a relationship based on reality, rather than idealized family roles. As for the money that had been repaid, I placed it in a trust for Lily's future education, with a small portion set aside for her immediate needs and the art supplies and classes she loved. More importantly, I set up transparent financial education for her, teaching her about budgeting, saving, and the value of money lessons. My own family had clearly never learned properly. One evening, as Lily and I sat on the balcony of our apartment watching the sunset, she asked a question that surprised me. Do you think we'll ever be a normal family again, with Grandma, Grandpa, and Aunt Natalie? I considered carefully before answering. I don't think we'll ever be the same as before. And maybe that's okay. The normal we had wasn't real. It was built on lies. What we might become instead is something more authentic, a family that's faced its worst problems and chosen to grow from them. She nodded thoughtfully. I'm still angry sometimes, but I don't want to be angry forever. That's wisdom, sweetheart, I told her. Holding on to anger hurts you more than it hurts them. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or putting yourself in a position to be hurt again. It means freeing yourself from the burden of resentment while still maintaining healthy boundaries. The journey we began that Christmas Eve continued to unfold with setbacks and progress, pain, and healing. But through it all, Lily and I discovered that the greatest wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in truth, integrity, and the courage to stand up for what's right, even when those who should protect you are the ones causing harm. Looking back now, a year after that fateful Christmas, when my daughter's innocent question, "What money?" shattered our family's foundation, I can see how far we've all come. The road hasn't been easy, but the difficult journey has led us to a better place than I could have imagined during those dark days. I completed my military service commitment and transitioned to civilian medicine, accepting a position at a respected hospital that gives me regular hours and no deployments. This stability has been crucial for rebuilding my relationship with Lily and creating the secure home environment she deserves. Our apartment has become a true home, filled with Lily's artwork on the walls and photographs of our new memories together. Her transformation over this year has been remarkable. From the quiet, uncertain teenager who believed her mother couldn't or wouldn't provide for her, she's blossomed into a confident young woman who excels academically and has discovered a genuine talent for art. Last month, Lily had her first gallery showing at a student exhibition with 3 of her pieces selected for display. I watched with immense pride as she confidently discussed her work with visitors, including an art professor, who mentioned college scholarship possibilities. These are opportunities she might never have discovered if we hadn't broken free from the toxic situation at my parents' home. The trust fund I established with the restitution money has grown steadily, ensuring Lily will have financial support for college and beyond. More importantly, I've taught her financial literacy skills that my parents never passed on to me. She understands budgeting, saving, and the importance of ethical financial management. Money isn't just about what you can buy, I explained to her. It's about security, opportunities, and choices. But it's never worth sacrificing your integrity. My relationship with my parents and sister has evolved in ways I never expected. The intensive family therapy sessions gradually shifted from crisis management to genuine healing. My father, always the most stoic of the family, was surprisingly the first to make real progress. "I've been thinking about why I did what I did," he told us during a session about 6 months into our therapy. "It wasn't really about the money. It was about control. I resented that you were successful without my help, Gloria. And I resented that Lily admired you more than me, even though you were far away." That level of self-awareness marked a turning point in our recovery process. My mother followed with her own revelations, acknowledging how jealousy had corrupted her love for both me and Lily. Natalie had the hardest journey. Having to sell her car and move to a smaller apartment was a constant reminder of her role in the betrayal. But eventually, she too found her way to genuine remorse and change. I was so focused on what I didn't have that I couldn't appreciate what I did have, she admitted. I treated Lily as competition for resources, rather than as my niece who needed love and support. By the 9-month mark, our therapist, Dr. Gonzalez, suggested we begin occasional family gatherings outside of therapy. The first dinner together was awkward and tense, but each subsequent meeting became more comfortable as new, healthier patterns of interaction developed. Perhaps the most profound change came in how each of us views money and material possessions. My parents downsized their home, selling the property they had filled with expensive furniture bought with my money. They moved to a smaller place that better suited their actual financial situation. "We're learning to live within our means," my mother told me. "It's actually liberating not trying to keep up appearances anymore." Natalie discovered unexpected satisfaction in earning her own way. She returned to college to finish her long-abandoned degree and found part-time work that aligned with her studies. "I never thought I'd say this," she confessed to me over coffee, "but there's something satisfying about buying something with money you've earned yourself, even if it's not as fancy as what I used to have." As for Lily, she developed a healthy relationship with money that balanced appreciation without attachment. When she turned 17 last month, I gave her a reasonable allowance that she manages entirely on her own, with transparent discussions about her choices. The most meaningful moment of our healing journey came unexpectedly last week. My parents invited us for dinner. And as we were leaving, my father handed Lily an envelope. "This is for your college fund," he said. "It's not much, but it's what your grandmother and I can afford to contribute honestly." The amount was modest, but the gesture was priceless. It represented their commitment to supporting Lily the right way within their actual means, without deception. Later that night, Lily shared a perspective that moved me deeply. "You know what I learned from everything that happened," she said as we drove home, "that the strongest person isn't the one who yells the loudest or gets the most revenge. It's the one who stands up for what's right while still giving people a chance to make amends." Her wisdom reminded me of the choice I'd made that Christmas Eve, choosing strategic action over emotional reaction. By maintaining my composure and focusing on justice rather than vengeance, I had not only protected Lily's financial interests, but had modeled the kind of strength that comes from integrity and self-control. The greatest lesson from this ordeal wasn't about money at all, but about honesty, boundaries, and the courage to confront painful truths. We discovered that real family bonds aren't based on blind trust or idealized images, but on authentic relationships that can withstand challenges and grow through accountability. For anyone facing betrayal by those they trusted most, I hope our story offers both caution and hope. The path to healing isn't easy or quick, but it's possible when we choose truth over comfort and growth over resentment. Sometimes the family we rebuild after betrayal can be stronger than the one we lost, grounded in reality rather than illusion. Have you ever had to confront a painful truth about someone you trusted? How did you handle it, and what did you learn from the experience? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If our journey has resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories about overcoming life's challenges with dignity and strength. Thank you for listening, and remember that even in your darkest moments, you have the power to choose how you respond.